Once upon a time, many moons ago, I was eating at a restaurant with a big group of friends. Our table was round a corner in a booth, and fairly tucked away, out of sight of most of the diners. In the middle of our meal, one of my friends, let's call her Helen, went to the bathroom. On her way back to our table, a man seated at a table shouted "Oi waitress" at her. I have no idea why he thought she was a waitress, as her clothes were nothing like the uniform. She went over to him, I think just to see what his deal was. He said he had never been to that particular restaurant before and he wanted to know if he had to go up to the counter to order or if there was table service. Now, this restaurant did not have table service, you were supposed to go up to the counter to order. But it turns out Helen is a vengeful sort. Feeling annoyed that he had yelled "Oi waitress" at her, which is kinda rude whether you work there or not, quite frankly, she decided to tell him that there was table service and that someone would be along to take his order shortly. She then returned to our table, told us the story of what had just happened. We giggled a bit and then carried on with our meal. I thought her trick was a little mean, to be honest, but I was sure this man would figure it out soon enough and would then place his order at the counter. On our way out of the restaurant, however, Helen pointed out the man to us. He was still sitting at his table, with no food, and was now looking quite agitated. As Helen put her coat on, pointed him out and exited the restaurant, he caught sight of her and it became clear that slowly, he was starting to realize what had happened. His table was right next to the glass frontage, so we remained in sight for quite some time as we walked away from the restaurant. And we all witnessed as his look of slow realization turned to pure thunder. He'd probably been waiting there for about 25 minutes, sitting there and getting increasingly annoyed that nobody had taken his order yet. Helen had absolutely no sympathy. Another tale of a time I found myself giving IT support in a very random situation. My last post, for those who remember it, reminded me of this situation. My last post was "Why it's bad to mention you work in IT, this is why it can be good." This was a few years ago when I was 18 or 19. I was at a fairly busy local pub having drinks with a friend. It was quite late in the evening and I was fairly tipsy. I go to the bar with my friend, and ask for 2 double vodka and cokes. I was told by the young woman behind the bar sheepishly, she can't put it through at the moment as the till is frozen and she's waiting for the manager to turn up to fix it for her. I say jokingly, "I work in IT, want me to take a look?" Fully expecting her to laugh it off and not allow a drunk stranger access to their point-of-sale system. Immediately after I speak, the manager turns up, he looks at the till screen confused, I see him tap the screen a lot while I patiently wait for my drink. I can see the bartender and manager talking for a moment. The bartender points at me and I overhear that guy says he can work in IT, maybe he can help. The manager's eyes light up. He approaches me and asks me to come behind the bar. Internally I'm laughing because I know I'm getting free drinks out of this. Manager, the till is frozen. Bartender, says you know computers? Do you think you can help? Me, yeah sure, I'll take a look. I look at the till, it's Android based and there was an app open which looked like some sort of point of sale administration app. As opposed to a till app, it seemed to respond to input, so wasn't actually frozen, but apparently it was the wrong app and they didn't know how to get out of it. I noticed the back, home and recent apps was missing from the bottom of the screen. In my mind I think it's a Linux system, I know this. I swipe upwards from the bottom of the screen and the buttons appear. I press the home button, then the bartender opens up the correct app. Bartender, how did you do that? I demonstrate to her and the manager what I did. Then go back to my friend on the other side of the bar. 2 double vodka and cokes appear in front of us and the manager thanks me. I continue with my evening. Once my drink was empty, the bartender dropped off another free double vodka and coke on my table. I felt it was a very satisfying evening. I was at the post office with 2 packages to mail. While I waited in the queue I pulled up my address list in the Amazon app so I knew where to send them. When it was my turn next, an attendant said to me, "I can take the next person who's not using their phone please." It was said intentionally for me to put my phone away. So I put it away, proceed to the counter and place my packages down. I'm asked where they are going and I reply that I don't have them memorized, which is why I had them ready in my phone to expedite this process. So I just stood there until the attendant asked me to take my phone back out. I understand it can be rude to be talking on the phone, but not being allowed to use it at all for any purpose is a bit much. Backstory: a few weeks ago we had a guest check-in that is going to be here until mid-August, maybe longer. We've got a good rate for him, since he's staying so long, and he's been no trouble at all. Love him. I get a call last week, Thursday I think, and this guest is like, "Hey, our carpet is soaked with water coming from the AC unit." And I was stunned, because that's never happened before. So I give him the standard apologies and tell him we can move him to another room, no problem, and I alert the maintenance staff, which is basically 2 people, since our hotel is small and running on the most bony of skeleton crews. Guy says, "That's fine, but we don't want to move tonight because we're actually on our way to some plans we made. Can we do it tomorrow?" I said sure, why not. I made a note on their file and in our big book, and life went on. He moved into the room across the hall, all was well. Fast forward to tonight. I check this very nice lady and her husband in, give them the room that had the AC issue without thinking. It's not set out of service, though, so I assumed, hey, maintenance fixed it. Way to go. Not even 5 minutes later, I get a call at the desk from their room saying there's no AC. I start my usual spiel, sometimes you have to turn it on and let it run, since a few of our AC units are a bit older, blah blah blah, but she cuts me off. "No," she says. "There is no AC unit. There's just a hole in the wall." A what? I'm incredulous. Flabbergasted. Utterly speechless. A hole in your wall? Still don't know what happened exactly, but the working theory is that either the person who moved the original gentleman didn't set the room out of service, or they just didn't set it out for long enough to get a unit reinstalled in there. But there's now a giant note in our book and hanging from our desk. The lady who informed me got moved to a room with no holes and was very amused by the entire thing, thankfully, and I texted the day shift clerk about it so we could both just be baffled together. A hole, in the wall, that nobody saw fit to inform the front desk of. Somehow it isn't anything like what I expected a front desk clerk to be like. I'm a STEM grad student and the only woman in our lab of 10-ish people. Each of us have a lab job, scheduling meetings, maintaining equipment, whatever. The guy who swaps out all the gas cylinders regularly, the most physically demanding job, just graduated. In a group meeting, we were discussing who would be the next gas cylinder guru. Robert, Andrew, and Richard, you don't have lab jobs yet, who wants to do it? Of course I wouldn't stand for this. Why is it assumed that it must be given to a man? Women can move heavy things too, darn it. So I said I don't have a job either, I'll just do it. I knew right away that I had flipped up, all the guys started smiling and I knew I had been tricked. Sure enough, they knew if they didn't ask me I would volunteer for the job to prove a point and I'd get stuck with the most annoying lab job. Doctor, volunteered for a physically demanding duty to prove a point, and got stuck with it. Many moons ago, I worked at a residential treatment center doing direct care with teens. While in most jobs breaks are a built-in and guaranteed part of the workday, this was not the case here. We had compliance concerns around mandatory staff-to-client ratios and this often made it difficult, sometimes impossible to get a break during your shift. That being said, most of us working the line had a pretty good system worked out for trying to get folks a break. If we happened to notice that all of the kids and staff were present on the unit at the same time, we'd have someone take a break and then hold off on moving on with programming until they had returned. After working there for approximately 2 years, the guy who ran the residential unit was let go for stealing from the clients. Real nice guy. At this point they hired a new guy to take over. He had not worked at our agency before, he had not ever done direct care himself before, but he did have experience in administrative positions in agencies similar to ours. He came in as most administrators do that have no experience of the job and thought he knew best about everything. Pretty quickly he became concerned that we were taking advantage of taking breaks throughout the day, which could not have been further from the truth. Again, most days you were lucky if you got one break at all, and that includes while working double shifts. So he came up with the plan that in order to take a break you needed his permission. During the daytime when he was present at the unit this was not a huge deal as you could simply walk over and ask him. This immediately became a problem however for staff working evening, overnight and weekend shifts who would need to call him to get permission. Anywho, I'm someone who is always up for following the rules, so during my first shift, I was shift supervisor and therefore responsible for the other staff working during my shifts. I asked everyone to please do as he had asked. By the end of that first shift not one person had gotten a break. Each time we had an opportunity ratio-wise we'd give him a call, which he wouldn't answer. By the time he called back 30 minutes to an hour later, the opportunity was gone. When I showed up the next day I explained to him what had happened the previous evening and asked him to reconsider. He refused. So, I did what any logical person would do. I told my staff to call him when they wanted a break, and if he didn't answer they were to call again and again until we reached him. He probably received upwards of 40 phone calls that shift, I should note, of which he answered none. Sadly, this did not result in any of us getting a break that night, but by the time I showed up for my shift the next day we had an email from him letting us know that we no longer needed to call him and get his permission for breaks. For background, this happened back in January and I live in Chicago, Ill. I had just come from a job interview, so I was dressed up in a white shirt, black pants, tie, and shoes. During this time it was freezing cold outside, and all I had was a coat and hat, so I stopped off at a department store to try to find a scarf and some gloves. It was really warm inside the store, so I had no choice but to take my coat off. And due to how I was dressed I was stopped several times by people mistaking me for an employee. After a while I needed to go to the bathroom, and after I was finished I went back to shopping. A few minutes later a guy asked me where the bathroom was, and since I was just there I had no problem pointing it out to him. That's when the trouble started. Not a second I get a tap on my shoulder from Karen. K. Karen. M. Me. K. Excuse me sir, could you help me? M. Sorry ma'am, I don't work here. K. Yes you do, I saw you helping that man, so you can help me. M. Again, I don't work here ma'am, all I did was tell him where the bathroom was. K. No, you're just being lazy, can you please tell me where this item is? At this point I saw this conversation was going nowhere, so I walked off, with Karen hot on my trails. Thankfully on my way I came across an actual employee. K. Karen. M. Me. E. Employee. M. Hi, can you help me? I explained to this woman that I don't work here but she won't leave me alone. K. Could you please get your manager, your co-worker here refuses to help me. E. He doesn't work here ma'am. K. Well, why is he helping other customers? M. All I did was point out the bathroom. E. After holding back laughter, ma'am, I'd be happy to help, sir, you have a nice day. After that I grabbed my items and checked out. So my girlfriend and I work from home for different companies. I'm working from home every other week. This is an at-home week. We were having our morning meeting over the internet. Voice only. There are 8 of us on the call including my manager and me. And the manager of our location was talking to each of us about things we're doing, things that need to be done, etc. When she got to me, we went over a few things, told me some things that needed to be done. I explained that I'm trying but other people in a neighboring department don't really help and make it very difficult for me to do what she was asking. She told me what she wanted and I said okay. I then muted my headset and started venting to my GF about the difficulty I was having that my manager seemed to gloss over. I was sort of mocking what she said to me because she made it seem like it was a simple thing to accomplish. Ending with an exasperated "What am I supposed to do?" to which my manager replied, "Hey, we can all hear you, you might want to stop talking." After which I explained I was supposed to be muted. The red light was lit on my headset. I may have apologized, I don't recall. After the meeting I sent her a message apologizing and explained that I was just venting because I'm having a hard time with the job and don't know everything I'm supposed to and that expectations keep changing. Told her that I would appreciate if she could call me and we could talk about it because I'm having a real hard time concentrating on my job when I don't know if I'll still have it next week. But she's busy in conference calls for a while, so she won't be able to call me for a bit. Good times. DL, Doctor vented about my boss to my GF while on a conference call, thought I was muted, everyone heard me. Update, boss lady didn't mention it during my daily checkout. So I'm gonna cross my fingers that she doesn't fire me tomorrow because that's my Friday. Back around 2003 I worked for an electricity company in the UK. I was on the prepayment team which always had good stories as people who were on this type of meter were people who had serious debt or were generally scummy. It was rare to get the nice people who just wanted to keep track of their bills. One story always amuses me anytime I think about it. A guy called in cause he had no hot water and knew there was money there so he figured his meter was broken. These meters tend to be under stairs in a darkened cupboard. Conversation as follows. Me, is there a display on the meter? Customer, I can't see, it's pretty dark. There's normally a light on the meter but that's not on. Me, okay, I just need to make sure there's no display, can you press the red button please? Customer, I can't see a red button, it's right in the corner. Hang on. Let me light a match so I can see better. Now having an open flame near a gas device is never a good idea. Before I had a chance to tell him so, the phone went dead. I started panicking thinking that this guy has just killed himself and blown up his house. I asked my manager what I should do and he said try calling him back and if there's no answer call the police. I called back and the guy answers. Me, is everything okay? Customer, yeah, match burned my finger and I dropped the phone, it must have hung up. Me, phew. Don't light a match near the meter, I thought you'd blown yourself up. Customer, oh yeah, didn't think of that. Anyway, I did manage to notice there's no display. Boring end was it turned out the meter was faulty and I had engineer replace it. Still, panicked the life out of me for a moment. This happened in 2006 when I was 16. I dropped out of school and was living with my aunt for a while. She was good friends with the manager of the small grocery store around the corner from her house, so she got me a job there. Even though it was my first job, I learned quickly and within a week I was able to run the store on my own if someone called in sick or went on their lunch break. It was a small grocery store along a highway rest stop and next to a popular beach, so most of the customers were families or people on holiday, with the occasional celebrity. At 16 I could pass for 18 if I wanted to, but I could be mistaken for 14 or 15 and I wasn't wearing makeup, and the work uniform made me look even younger. Black pants and a light blue button-up shirt that gave my B-cup zero shape. So what customers saw was a short, skinny, flat-chested child behind the register. Most of them didn't question that I worked there, but there was this one customer that did. I'd just come back from my lunch break and the other staff member went on her break after that. The manager wasn't due back until around closing time, so I was alone in the store while the other employee went on her hour lunch break. That wasn't an issue, as it was usually quiet around that time of day, but even if it got busy I could easily do it on my own. Then in walked Karen. Karen, seeing me behind the register, "Excuse me? What do you think you're doing there?" "Me, I'm working." Karen, "No you are not. Now get out from behind there or I'll call the manager. I'm good friends with her." The manager was a man, so I called her bluff. "Me, call her then." Karen, "I will. Now I want you out of there now because I know you don't work here." I was in uniform and it's a recognized grocery store franchise in Australia, so I don't know where her thought process was coming from. But I obliged. I stood next to the register and watched her do her shopping. When she was done, she came up to the register and waited. And waited. And waited. Karen, after a few minutes of waiting and looking around for a staff member and ignoring me standing there, "Hello? Can I get some service?" "Me, I could help but you said I don't work here." Karen, "Fine then. Just do your darn job." "Me, yes ma'am." I went to the register and put her items through at lightning speed, just to prove that I knew what I was doing. "Me, after I finished and giving he a huge smug smile, "Have a nice day." She came in a few times after that, but I didn't have any other issues, so I think she learned her lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover. My niece recently became injured in a biking accident. She's fine now, just recovering, and I wanted to get something to cheer her up. She's 16 and loves clothes, but I'm a college student and don't have much money, so I went to Goodwill. While I was there, with a friend, I stumbled across a red shirt with a pie on it featuring the words "Squat Cobbler." There were 2 dents in the pie insinuating someone sat in it, butt cheeks. I bring it to my friend, she laughs, I laugh, we thinks it's just some goofy inside joke since it was obviously custom made. We decide to buy the shirt and a pair of sunglasses for my niece and head back home. I give her the shirt and sunglasses and she laughs, putting them on, and asks us what it meant, and we told her it meant nothing. But then I suddenly realized I didn't know if that was true. I was a fool. I'm 21 years old, I use the internet every day. I've seen the decrepit recesses no man should ever see. Squat cobbler could mean anything. I crossed my fingers that it was just some innocent inside joke as we believed, but no. First result, Urban Dictionary, squat cobbler, a sexual act wherein a fully clothed, typically costumed subject pulls his/her pants down and squats the exposed buttocks down into a pie and wiggles around while being observed or filmed. Commonly associated with fetishists. What have I done? She loves the shirt, but I can't let her wear it in public even if the odds of someone recognizing it are slim. She already posted a photo of it on her social media. I guess I get to explain what a squat cobbler is to my niece now and hope nobody who knows has seen it. Edit spelling and for those saying it's fake. TL, Dr. I tried to cheer my niece up by buying a goofy thrifted shirt featuring the word squat cobbler, but only Googled it after I gave it to her and learned a squat cobbler is a fetish for watching clothed people sit on pies. She has already shared herself wearing it on social media. I'm a courtroom assistant in a Southeast Asian country. I'd rather not get much further than that on identifying information. We do both security and practical assistance like moving displays, escorting juries, and some ceremonial stuff as well. This was the sentencing of an evil flip on several high crime offenses, similar to what a capital offense may be in America. Here high crime is the level above criminal offense, or felony for the rest of the world. He stalked, kidnapped, raped, and murdered a locally famous and growing pop artist who was pregnant. He was charged with stalking, high crime kidnapping, high crime rape, high crime murder, high crime fetal homicide, and a bunch of other stuff. Evil Flip, as he will be referred to from here on out, was on suicide precautions as he made threats against his own life in prison, so he was in spiffy paper clothes. We were well into victim impact statements. The victim had a large family and there were something like 35 individuals addressing the court. We're something like 28 statements into it. Next up was Granddad. These are always really emotional, families are always really upset for good reason, but this 80-plus old guy is the worst I can remember. He was crying, breathing heavily, shaking, the entire sentencing. He was called to make his statement, starts walking up, about past the counsel table. He then turns, tackles the attorneys and Evil Flip. He didn't get much in on the Evil Flip, maybe a kick and 2 punches before 15 of us pile up on him. He was taken into custody, and it quickly became apparent that Evil Flip got what was coming. Evil Flip is screaming and gagging for about 20 seconds, then he starts convulsing, came back in about 2 minutes choking/gagging, really bad. We put him on his side and get an ambulance on the way. The rest of the gallery was evacuated and court went into recess. By time the ambulance arrives he's not breathing, only twitching and has no pulse. They do CPR, take him out to the hospital. He was revived and died later that day. Coroner's report said his brainstem was damaged, his skull was broken, and brain herniated through break in his skull. The Granddad was interviewed by national police who have jurisdiction of courts. He said that he'd been planning that for days, he felt no remorse, said if he had time he would have killed the attorneys too. It also came out that the Granddad was in my country's mob back in the day, had 40 years in prison prior for drowning someone in petrol and lighting their corpse on fire. He was suspected but not confirmed to be involved in several other high-profile murders. He was charged with murder, conspiracy, contempt of court, and 2x simple battery for the attorneys. He was found not guilty of everything except contempt of court, to which he was originally sentenced to 4 years but it was reduced to terminal probation with home confinement due to his health. In rereading my last post, I feel like my frustration with dealing with the year of library Kavina has made me really sensitive to when she does a dumb thing that might not necessarily translate to explaining how Kevin why she is. I hope this one is more illustrative of what I'm dealing with. During our first closure due to the Rona, for some reason, the county decided to basically turn off our AC for that month and a half. While probably saving them some money, it also stopped the AC from keeping the air dry. Moisture plus books equals not good. So now we have a mold problem. To combat this, we've got a couple of dehumidifiers. While we were closed the second time, our administrative staff has been handling turning them on and off, but now that we're open again, it's now our responsibility. The director sent us an email detailing how we needed to check them throughout the day and empty them as they fill up. This morning, I came in and Kavina said, "The dehumidifiers aren't working. I turned them on and they don't make any noise." I went and looked. They were turned on, but they were full of water so their automatic shutoffs had kicked in. I told Kavina and her response was, oh, we need to empty them." In this tone of wonder as though she was learning something new about how dehumidifiers work. Despite the email explaining that we needed to empty them regularly. And despite her being a 50-plus-year-old human being who should probably know the basics of how a dehumidifier works. And for those of you who suggested that I must be jealous of Kavina, you're probably right, but in the sense that she doesn't seem to retain any information we're given, yet still gets paid twice as much as I do. First I should mention that my hair is pretty long and at the time, maybe 10 years ago, it had been dyed a bright screaming orange. I do get lazy about maintaining my dye jobs, so while it was undoubtedly orange, it was pretty faded. We had a big opening on the following day and I was mentioning to a coworker that I was going to redye my hair for the occasion. I was really tired of my dull hair and couldn't wait to have my screaming orange again. Well, the assistant to the boss was standing nearby and overheard what I had just said. He told me that if I was going to come in like that, I'd better be wearing a hat. I did not even have to mentally go through my hat collection. I knew exactly what I was going to be wearing the next day. I have a very nice felted wool fedora in a glorious fluorescent orange. He looked pretty mad when I came in that morning and didn't speak one word to me the entire day. I wore it almost all day. My co-workers laughed their asses off. My only regret? My flaming orange hair did not quite match my flaming orange hat. Note, I'm not tech savvy, but if someone can tell me how to add a pic without using Imgur, I'll pay the hat tax. Hope this works, crossed fingers. The hat. This was a dozen years ago or so. My girlfriend, now wife, were moving into our first apartment together. We had scheduled for the power to be turned on Friday because that was the first day of the lease. Fast forward to our move-in week and our landlord says we can have the keys Wednesday if we want to start moving in early. We were so excited. Since we'd be moving in early, I called the power company and requested the power be turned on Wednesday. This was short notice, instead of Friday. They said it wouldn't be a problem, and to make sure the main circuit breaker was turned off so that they could turn the power on. Here was the problem, they couldn't tell me exactly when the power was going to be turned on, and for them to turn it on I had to have the breaker off. If the breaker is off then I can't tell if the power is on. So I called, they told me the power wasn't on yet, and that they couldn't call me when it was turned on. I told them this was fine, I would just call back later. Q malicious compliance /. I carried a box up to the apartment, third floor walked back down to the truck, called the power company. They confirmed that the power wasn't on yet and that I needed to keep the breaker off. I carried another box up to the apartment and walked back downstairs to call the power company again. You see where this is going? I think after calling them after every trip down the stairs, the power was on within an hour. I don't know what their call center looked like, but I was getting the same person every time, and she didn't sound too happy to hear from me. This was pre-smartphone era, and we didn't have internet yet either. Not that I think the utility company had a way of checking your status online back then anyhow. TLDR. All I wanted was for them to tell me when the power was on because they made it sound like the apartment would explode if I had the main breaker on when they turned the power on. They refused, so I called after every trip down the stairs for a status check. This happened in 2006 when I was 16. I dropped out of school and was living with my aunt for a while. She was good friends with the manager of the small grocery store around the corner from her house, so she got me a job there. Even though it was my first job, I learned quickly and within a week I was able to run the store on my own if someone called in sick or went on their lunch break. It was a small grocery store along a highway rest stop and next to a popular beach, so most of the customers were families or people on holiday, with the occasional celebrity. At 16 I could pass for 18 if I wanted to, but I could be mistaken for 14 or 15 and I wasn't wearing makeup, and the work uniform made me look even younger. Black pants and a light blue button-up shirt that gave my B-cup zero shape. So what customers saw was a short, skinny, flat-chested child behind the register. Most of them didn't question that I worked there, but there was this one customer that did. I'd just come back from my lunch break and the other staff member went on her break after that. The manager wasn't due back until around closing time, so I was alone in the store while the other employee went on her hour lunch break. That wasn't an issue, as it was usually quiet around that time of day, but even if it got busy I could easily do it on my own. Then in walked Karen. Karen, seeing me behind the register, "Excuse me? What do you think you're doing there?" "Me, I'm working." Karen, "No you are not. Now get out from behind there or I'll call the manager. I'm good friends with her." The manager was a man, so I called her bluff. "Me, call her then." Karen, "I will. Now I want you out of there now because I know you don't work here." I was in uniform and it's a recognized grocery store franchise in Australia, so I don't know where her thought process was coming from. But I obliged. I stood next to the register and watched her do her shopping. When she was done, she came up to the register and waited. And waited. And waited. Karen, after a few minutes of waiting and looking around for a staff member and ignoring me standing there, "Hello? Can I get some service?" "Me, I could help but you said I don't work here." Karen, "Fine then. Just do your darn job." "Me, yes ma'am." I went to the register and put her items through at lightning speed, just to prove that I knew what I was doing. "Me, after I finished and giving he a huge smug smile, "Have a nice day." She came in a few times after that, but I didn't have any other issues, so I think she learned her lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's very sad and strange when an unsolved mystery bumps up against your real life. I recently learned that one of my friend's cousins was Andrew Amato, a 4-year-old who disappeared in Massachusetts over 40 years ago. I've known about Andrew's case for a long time from researching local true crime, but never realized how close to home it truly was. Andrew was last seen on September 30, 1978 outside his home in Webster, Massachusetts. He was playing outside with his 6-year-old cousin Jeannie. They were heading down a path towards Route 52, now Route 395, a wooded area that was supposed to be off-limits to the kids. Andrew eventually tripped and fell, losing his favorite toy Weeble in the process. He started crying and refused to go home without his Weeble. Jeannie told Andrew to stay put and went to get help from an adult, but when they returned Andrew was nowhere to be found. It's been almost 42 years and Andrew hasn't been seen since. A multi-week search for Andrew involving 10,000 volunteers and the National Guard failed to turn up the 4-year-old. The most significant find from the search was Andrew's Weeble toy. It was found by a 50-year-old man from nearby Rhode Island whose name was never officially released to the public, so I'll refer to him as Gary. Gary claimed to have found the Weeble in a leaf pile that had suspiciously already been searched by police. It's unclear how significantly Gary was investigated as a suspect in 1978. Over 20 years later in 1999, Gary allegedly made a lung cancer deathbed confession to his mother and a sibling that he had kidnapped and killed Andrew. This information was communicated to police by the family in 2003, 4 years after Gary's death. This led to a series of searches around Burrillville, Rhode Island, just south of the MA/RE border, but no known significant discoveries. The other suspect linked to Andrew Amato's disappearance has been Nathaniel Benjamin Levy Barjona, born David Paul Brown in Worcester, Massachusetts. Barjona is a convicted child molester and kidnapper, suspected serial killer and cannibal. He's been tied to all sorts of awful things happening to children across the country, including Massachusetts, not far from Andrew's last known location. Decoded notebooks authored by Barjona describe torturing and eating children, including recipes involving children's body parts. Just pure evil. Some reports have indicated that a handwritten list of names, including Andrew's, entitled Lake Webster, was discovered in Barjona's possession in Montana in December 2001, but it seems these may have been unfounded rumors. Barjona was never directly tied to Andrew's disappearance and died of a heart attack in prison in 2008. It's been over 10 years since any significant new evidence has emerged in Andrew's case. Hopefully something will turn up to give the family some closure. Information is based on these websites as well as some local sources. Just happened. Worked in hotels for a long time. Currently working overnight because I need minimum people interaction. We're a brand new hotel about 15 miles outside of the city in the suburbs. Our rates have dropped due to the virus. There has been a very large influx of guests coming in from parts of the city, most are POC. I have absolutely no problem with that. What I do have a problem with, is being accused of racially profiling, and discrimination on a daily basis, for doing my job. These guests are smoking weed in our rooms, setting off poppers, prostitutes, passed out on drugs, and domestic violence in our parking lot. As soon as I address anything, in a polite, professional manner, they snap at me. I just got a call at 1 a.m. to see if we have vacancy. I told them our rate, they asked me for some kind of discount that I never heard of. I apologized and said that is what we have available. She told me to call my manager. At 1 in the morning. No. Honestly, these guests, not all, have pulled the manager card on me so many times, but it's consistent on a new level I've never dealt with before. Telling me aggressively basically that they'll get what they want. One return guest, who has been comped twice before, came back a third time and instantly started complaining. Just ridiculous. I advocate for people's rights every day. I treat everyone with respect when they walk in, but it's not to be taken advantage of and spit on. I'm so sick of this level of aggressive entitlement. Don't get me wrong, we had one big-ass wedding group 2 weeks ago. 50+ rooms booked, all of them from a rich part of NY/Brooklyn/Staten Island. At one point I had 4 drunk men berating me and screaming at me because one reservation didn't get their room type. Last weekend? Told snarky rich whiter than snow Karen we didn't have her room type available, completely flipped shoot on me. Went from 0 to 100 in less than 5 seconds. Demanding 2 rooms, demanding compensation. We just came from blah blah blah. You're gonna give me blah blah blah? No. I hope this dies down. I'm really overwhelmed and anxious since I'm FD overnight, by myself. I joined a new school in a new city and as far as first impressions go, I just suck. The class teacher asked the other students how the new kid is, and they said, she was as dumb as they come. I was shy and unnerved, to be honest. I didn't like anybody in that class. I automatically became a part of the little group that didn't require me to talk much. There was a test the next day, since I had joined late. I submitted the test a good 45 minutes before time. The teacher mocked me and asked how much would I get, if I could manage to pass. The whole class laughed. I didn't react. The next time she came, her smirk was gone. I had scored full. She did cut a mark out of spite, which I pointed out. Then I had reached the limit, she was fuming and it would not go down well, so I didn't push. I used to work as a manager at a small business. I was the only employee on site during the day, so I was expected to answer the phone, check in deliveries, help walk-in customers, etc. anytime they came in. Because I constantly needed to be available, I didn't have a real lunch break. I would just eat my lunch at my desk when I had time. One afternoon when my boss called me on the office phone and very casually asked, "Hey, what's going on? What are you working on?" I told him the project I was in the middle of, and he said, "Really? Because I've been watching the cameras and you've been messing around on your cell phone for the last 5 minutes." I explained to him that my fiancée had texted because there was an emergency that had come up and I was trying to help him handle it, giving him the account information, logins and passwords, etc. since I was working and couldn't handle it. His response was, "I don't care. I don't ever want to catch you on your phone again." I tried to explain that I didn't get any breaks or anything during the day, so I didn't have any of my own time to handle things that may come up, but he didn't care. So, knowing full well that the owners, the other managers, and staff members constantly texted me throughout the day whenever they needed something, I complied. The next day I came in and I left my phone in my purse. I had a smartwatch, so I could see when I got a text, but I didn't answer, because I wasn't allowed to be on my phone. After 2 days of me ignoring their requests during the day and only answering their texts after leaving, saying sorry, I didn't see your text because I'm not allowed to be on my phone at work. I've already left for the day. My boss came in and told me we needed to have a discussion. He called me out on my malicious compliance, but also acknowledged that I was essentially locked in the office for 8 hours a day. So, going forward I could take a half-hour lunch break where I didn't have to do anything else, and I was allowed to use my phone during the day, as long as I didn't abuse the privilege. I browse through this sub from time to time, although I have no true pharmacy affiliation. It interests me because I pick up a fair number of prescriptions each month, and I like to see what we, customers, look like from the other side. In fact, I try to avoid doing the things that make it more difficult for pharmacy employees. I've noticed it can be quite frustrating for you, and we seem like a bunch of blathering idiots. I have to wonder if it's not all us, but the fact that y'all are A. Extremely overworked. B. Underpaid, techs, anyway. C. Extremely overworked. It definitely does not seem like a fun time behind the counter. I could not take the constant barrage of phone calls, questions, computer work, filling, etc. I doubt most of you thought this was the end game when you worked so hard at pharmacy school. I worked a job for 22 years, flight attendant, where it seemed like the passengers often did not think seriously. So I wanted to say we see you, and we see how hard you work. We know it's not easy. We are genuinely not trying to make your day harder. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee. Cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about DJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. Please comment any possible missing persons. In July of 2020, Redgrave Research Forensic Services took on the case of Cape Girardeau John Doe, a man found deceased in 1980. There is not much known about Cape Girardeau John Doe as many of the reports were lost. This is the second John Doe case that Redgrave Research Forensic Services has taken from Southeastern Missouri University. They will be doing forensic genealogy research to find Cape Girardeau John Doe's family and identify his name. Redgrave has posted on their website a few links about this John Doe. His DNA sample is in CODIS and that did not produce any hits. Please feel free to share these links and get the word out that he is undergoing testing. Today I had the worst customer in the first 15 minutes that my store was open. I was minding my own business when a woman comes walking around the corner yelling, "Can I check out here?" I said, "Yes you can, the line starts over there." She was being rude about the long line over at the other register and I just wasn't having it today. So I said, "Okay, sorry about the line, the pandemic has changed the way things happen here, but the woman at the register will be happy to take you once she finishes with her customer." She then got upset and said, "That's a transaction and it's going to take too long and I'm in a hurry, my mother is waiting for me, can't you just ring me out?" In my head I'm think that it's not my problem, your mother is waiting for you, and that if she didn't have time to shop she shouldn't have come in. So now I'm frustrated and so I say, "No ma'am, I can't ring you out, that's not my job, you'll have to wait," and then I walked away and continued to do what I was supposed to. I had 2 coworkers come up to me after and tell me they were proud of me for telling this woman that it wasn't my job. Lol. Last night my last delivery of the night was to someone named Deuce, not sure if it was first or last or real or nickname. I had a weird night where I wasn't super busy until the last 15 plus minutes. We stopped taking delivery orders at 10 p.m. so usually I go cash out then and I'm home a little after 10 p.m. I go to cash out and I have 2 deliveries to take, then when I come back I can cash out and take the last delivery on my way home. Generally people that order late understand that it kinda sucks for the delivery driver and usually give a 5 tip. Sadly not everyone tips and not everyone understands how little I actually make minus tips. Deuce seemed to understand. Credit card order with a 10 tip. My favorite kind. I call him right after I park cause he's in an apartment and he meets me at the door. I hand him his food and it was the perfect delivery. I got home a little later than usual, but thanks for the generous tip, Deuce. I'm a cashier at a smaller grocery store chain on the East Coast. The day that this story occurred was a very busy Friday, and 3 of our front-end managers had just quit, so we were pretty understaffed. A dirty and tired-looking young woman came through my line with normal groceries, milk, bread, frozen food, and I rang up her order. She then proceeded to pull out a plastic bag filled with Canadian quarters to pay me with. I obviously questioned her and she assured me they were just funny-looking quarters. I honestly had no desire to argue with this woman, but I still paged the one front-end manager there at the moment, and she assured me that I could take the Canadian quarters as payment. I was shocked and counted them all out, but I was still unsure. I talked to one of the main store managers later about it, who proceeded to talk to the front-end manager about it, who then cried in the bathroom because she was stressed out. The whole day was sort of dramatic. That same front-end manager also dropped a huge glass bottle of beer that got everywhere that day also. The smell was horrible. I also got cussed out by a customer when his order rang up wrong, and he stormed out of the store instead letting me fix the issue. Regardless, I'm glad that young woman got her groceries for basically free though, she honestly looked like she was going through it. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the imps got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. So today I was working in the inquiry office of a red-shirted delivery company. Again. I had 3 people come in today who still don't understand that we are a delivery office, not a post office. Clue is in the name. And also just general cluelessness from the public. 1. Man comes in and asks me if the postman has been to his address yet. Yet? I ask, he explains where he lives and asks if the postman has delivered there yet. It's 7:20 a.m. The lorry had literally just arrived. Also, I've done that round and the mail doesn't get there until the afternoon, so no idea why he thought that the postman would have already been. 2. Second man comes in and asks me to send a parcel off for him. Says he doesn't know what stamp it needs on it. Politely explained, sir, that's not what we do here. He's seen super put out that he has to go round to the post office to post it. 3. Lady comes in and asks to withdraw money. Honey, we're not an ATM and there is one, literally around the corner. I won't lie, but she did seem dodgy as well, so who knows. Not as exciting as most of the stories on here, but some days I need some strength to deal with people. Well, hello again, banking family. Thanks in advance for your input, and just letting me vent as well as have a place to express my thoughts. I'm sure they have their reasons. But none of us at my branch can understand the choice they made. We are the busiest branch, numbers don't lie. We barely have enough people even when we are rarely fully staffed, and recently they just extended our branch business hours. We found out yesterday that they have eliminated one of our teller positions for the first time in a year. We were finally fully staffed for maybe 3 weeks, and that teller will be moved to one of our slower branches. We are constantly swamped. Does anyone have any insight on why? Like why? Are you trying to drive us even more crazy? It makes one uneasy about job security, like we're lucky to have our jobs during COVID, but if they're willing to take a position from a branch who needs that help, putting that branch's employees through longer hours, and removing any quarterly compensation, what's next? They've already closed like 6 branches in the region over the last year. I'm hoping there will be a bright side, because it's becoming more and more difficult to stay positive. Thank you all again. A few weeks back, I was on a Saturday 3 to 11. The woman I'm checking in asks for late check. Sure, what time? She wants 6 p.m. Nah, this woman's only golden status. I offer her 2 p.m., consistent with her status. That doesn't work for her because she's meeting someone at 6. I inform her that even the highest level members only get 4 p.m. She asks how busy we are the next day, if we're sold out. I tell her no, which means to her that since we aren't selling out, we can let her stay late at no charge. Not happening. So I check her into room 912 and send her on her way with her still being a pill about it. Notes for the next day are made. I show up for my 3 p.m. shift the next day and see her wheeling her luggage into the lobby. I check the computer and see that she was checked out about 10 minutes prior. Conversation with the AM shift reveals they had to tell this woman to get out of the room because she didn't want to leave on time. Okay, I figure she'll hang out in the lobby for a bit then leave. 4 p.m. rolls around. She's still there. 5 p.m. Still there. 5:30 p.m. I'm making a few jokes about the time with my engineer. 6:30 p.m. and she's still sitting in my lobby. I'm checking in a family, and a young man gets in line. She goes to greet him then heads back to her stuff. I fail to put the pieces together in the moment. Dude is a higher level member, so I give him 10th floor and send him on his way. Then it hits me, and I wonder if I have time to fix my mistake. Nope, they're already together and heading towards the elevator. I spend the rest of the night kicking myself in the rear. I should have put him in the same room she had been asked to vacate. But I couldn't change his room without her seeing it, and that just would have caused me problems, so I had to let that opportunity pass by. Oh well, at least she had to respect the late checkout rules. This story involves me, my coworker, CW, my fiancé, F, and an old Nokia phone. It does not involve my smartphone, because 3 days prior to this flip-up, F accidentally threw it over our balcony. As a direct result I had to 1. Walk around with something in my pocket that had a closer resemblance to a brick than a modern-day smartphone. And 2. Endure the constant questions of what happened to my old one. Such as today. I had just finished my break and wanted to check my messages on the old window breaker when CW asked what had happened to my old phone. I simply shrugged and told him my late fiancée had broken it on accident. Now, here's where I flipped up. You'll have to know, English is not my first language. I speak it fairly well, but every now and then my German roots do come through, especially when I'm fumbling my way through conversation. This results in the occasional odd sentence on my part. Because in my mind late had the same meaning as latest or newly. Something I mentioned because the fiancé part was a very recent development, something I'm still thrilled about, and I wanted to drop it into the conversation. However, the not-so-subtle news of my recent engagement didn't have the effect it hoped it would have. Because CW suddenly got very serious, took a deep look into my eyes and told me how sorry he was to hear that. Now, someone offering their deepest condolences over a ruined piece of tech struck me as a little bit odd. It wasn't even that nice of a smartphone. I told him not to worry about it, I was already over it and would get a new one eventually. CW got very quiet at that. And I got the vague anxious feeling of someone who just killed the mood and didn't know why. Cut to 3 hours later and my boss is pulling me into his office to talk to me privately. He told me, again very empathetically, he got wind of my situation at home and if I wanted to take some time off it would be fine. I was thrilled. Told him I would consider his offer, work had been packed and I had hardly time for each other. My boss's understanding look turned into a very confused one. Which resulted in some very confusing questions. And me, also very confused, explaining that my fiancé was, contrary to popular belief, very much still alive. It took me another 30 minutes of following the rumor mill to figure out how the flip this had happened. After that, the offer of free vacation was sadly off the table. On the upside, my fiancé is already making quit telling everyone I'm dead jokes, so at least she's got a laugh out of it. DL, doctor, made my coworker believe my dead phone was actually my dead fiancé. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick, he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones, lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. Obligatory, this was not today, but many moons ago when I was in high school. I was way ahead of our time in manscaping. I used to keep my pubic area very clean, like razor clean. A razor shave requires a pre-cut with scissors. After not being able to locate a regular pair, I found a pair of used, but sterilized in an autoclave, surgical shears that my mom had procured. She's a nurse. I decided to use said shears while in the shower to trim back my pubes. I was pulling the pubes away from my pubic area and cutting them with the shears. It was working well enough despite the shear's shorter blade length. They were really sharp and chopping off all my short and curlies. After finishing with the futa, I moved down to my testes, otherwise known as James Westphal and Dr. Kenneth Noisewater. My confidence was high as I had finished the upper area with no issues. I'm continuing to pull the hairs and cutting them away. I get overzealous with my pulling and chopping and next thing I know, crunch. I cut right into my ball sack. It felt deep and this really thin membrane bleeds a lot, so it quickly started getting blood everywhere. I could see a piece of skin peeled back and blood was just coming out. Mixing with the water, it was a horrifying mess. I freaked out and thought the worst, but I managed to get out of the shower, clean myself up, and use some TP at first to help slow the bleeding. I eventually got a cotton ball and stuffed it onto my sack. I took it easy in my room for the next few hours but it continued to bleed and I had to replace the cotton balls several times. Eventually it stopped. I didn't need stitches and there was no significant damage, other than the emotional toll on my soul, and I have exercised extreme caution when manscaping ever since. DL, Doctor, I used really sharp scissors and accidentally cut a chunk out of my ball sack. Not the pettiest revenge ever, but it will be short and sweet. I work at a pizza place and most mornings I am running the COVID curbside, which entails answering phones, cutting saws, and packaging orders. It's a normal day. I generally love my job. It's boring. Phone rings. I take the order from an impatient man who just starts talking the moment I answer, rattling off his order without giving any info. Once he is done speaking and being fairly irate, I finally get his info and get his order in. He is very specific about everything. Things we always do. Told me to make sure his pizza is cut into 8 slices and the like. At the end I asked if he would like any plates or napkins to kill him with kindness, you know? He asked for 18 plates, said it about 9 times. I gave him 17 plates. We all had a nice laugh about it. He didn't call back but I just hope he was the one left without a plate. So me and this girl had been hanging out for a while and had agreed that our last hangout had felt like a date. We were going to do something tonight when she texted me this afternoon saying, "Hey, you're going to hate me for this but I'm canceling our plans. BC, a really hot dude has been trying to hang W me and we're hanging out tonight." Now I had asked her a few times throughout the past few days to hang out but she'd been busy until this night. So I, thinking it's a joke, go along with it and ask questions that would make it sound like I know that I'm the guy she's talking about and she goes along with it. They were going to hang out at the same time, he was driving the same car as me, etc. So here it comes 7 p.m. and I show up to her house and she looks panicked and asks what I'm doing here and that I need to leave. Being confused I tell her I'm here for her TN and then she tells me that she was being 100% true in what she was saying. So now I'm at my friend's house drinking brew and I'm confused. DLDR, Tifu by thinking a girl was fake canceling plans to hang out with a really hot guy instead. Thinking that she was trying to prank me and calling me a really hot guy. So some background, as always context is everything. I'm a Canadian expat now but lived in Canada for a large part of my life. A fun fact about the border between my two homes is that it's the longest in the world. Because of that, the situation for some towns near the border is legally squidgy. It's best way I can think of to describe the situation. I do encourage everyone to read up on Stansted, Quebec for a great example. Today's tale centers around the town of Point Roberts. Officially it's American but has no land access to the U.S. Residents can reach the U.S. by water though. Anyone who wants to drive there must go through Canada. It's a small place of maybe 4,000 people and as I understand it a lot of the economy is driven by Canadians popping in to take advantage of the lower gas prices and grocery prices. There are also quite a few small businesses there whose entire model is receiving packages for Canadians who want to buy at the lower American price and avoid paying international shipping rates. Of course when they take their stuff back across the border taxes are paid but many consider it to be worth it. Kevin asked me to take a trip with him there one Saturday as his car was in the shop. We went off and he revealed his cunning plan. He had purchased some luxury goods for himself, nothing illegal, and had asked the eBay seller to mark said goods at the low price of $100. I don't say anything, I was a lot more naive and young at that point and went along with it. So I am a Kevin here too, haha. We get his package from the delivery place with no problem and head back to the border. Problem 1 is discovered at this point as he goes through his package, there's no receipt. Problem 2 quickly hits when he decides to stick to his original plan. The border official was less than amused at the quoted value of the goods and asked us to step inside the office. Kevin sticks to his guns and tells the officers that the seller forgot the invoice, but he swears that's all he paid. They don't buy it. He emails the seller to ask for the invoice. 30 minutes pass. All this time he's telling them that they made a mistake. By now the officials are tired of his shtick and show him that they've used the power of Google to see what the stuff is worth, and it's definitely not 100, let's say. Kevin knows that they got him at this point and pays. The officers were generous and didn't fine him and let me go without incident. On the way back I'm pretty mad and he apologizes to me. I accept, but the very next sentence he's saying that next time he'll ask the seller to put a higher price on the item, say half their actual worth.